Gene Deal, former Diddy bodyguard, just did a podcast yesterday, I think it was, and he is hypothesizing that Diddy is in so much doo-doo facing life, he may try to give up information on the murder of Tupac. He might try to give up information on the murder of Biggie. If he has knowledge of these murder conspiracies, even if he's in the murder conspiracy, Diddy could ask for immunity to give other people up to the feds. What are your thoughts on that first?
Well, I can't say I know that Diddy knows so much about both cases and their murder, the murders of Biggie and Tupac. But I do like that Gene Deal helped Nick Broomfield out with identifying, some of the people, some of the key gunmen that he saw that night in the murder of Biggie. That helped in that investigation. But all of my information, it basically just points to that they tried to kill Tupac many times, probably about 5 times at least before they were successful. U.S. intelligence I'm talking about. And they first used, basically the FBI had a counterintelligence program that was official, that was found out by activists stealing all the documents from FBI file, an FBI office and file back in 1971. And it showed that the FBI had a major program against leftist activists in general, but particularly brutal against the Black Panthers. And that was Tupac's mother, who was one-time leader of the Harlem Black Panthers. So when Tupac became head of the New African Panthers, they would have a focus on him. Now, one time FBI COINTELPRO agent named Wes Swearingen said that in a memoir he came out with in 1995 that COINTELPRO continued only under different names. They were officially stopped in 1971, but continued under different names at least until the mid-1990s. So when Tupac became head of the New African Panthers, which was trying to replicate the Black Panthers and was active in about 8 to 10 cities nationwide, they obviously would have put him under their microscope and targeted him with the same tactics they used against the Black Panthers. And those tactics included false arrests and murder. And so when Tupac added wealth and fame to his activism, he, by becoming coming out with his first solo album, it was obvious that they would put him under more, scrutiny and more in the first attacks. And so they arrested him. He got his first arrest after his, first MTV video, Trapped, activist video, came out worldwide, and he was, arrested supposedly for jaywalking, walking across the street illegally or something when the light was red or whatever it was. And then he was choked unconscious and his head banged against the curb. And I showed how 2 other people died in police custody that way. And then so the attacks and the murderous attacks became more sophisticated as he got bigger and bigger. But so he was shot at by several supposedly off-duty cops in Atlanta, and but they didn't succeed. He merely shot back in self-defense, and then in a recording studio in New York, where people think Diddy might have been involved. But I don't really believe that. But I do know some other people that were involved, and this other guy that was involved, James Henchman Rosemont, was a government informant at that time. And he lured Tupac to that recording studio where Biggie and other people were recording in New York City, and at night. And people put the gunman put 2 bullets in the back of his skull, and they came out the front of his skull. So that was an assassination attempt. And I have the police affidavit in my book, Drugs as Weapons Against Us. I think I show it in my first film too. And finally, they did succeed in murdering him, and in Las Vegas. And there was loads of undercover, cops in death row records. Like Russell Poole said, there was dozens of police officers at all levels of death row records working for, them and trafficking drugs and guns. And when he asked the superiors, what are they doing there? He said, the superior said, you can call them covert, he said troubleshooters or covert agents. You can call all these dozens of police officers and death row records. So he says he believes His fellow police officers murdered Biggie to cover up their real murder target, which was Tupac Shakur, when they first murdered Tupac Shakur. And so now, Diddy, I think, was not activist at all. He was not political, but he became political within the next few years and became part of the Hip Hop Summit Action Network, which became very radical, and it included Democratic Socialist professors such as Manny Marable of Columbia University, who I've interviewed before, and he included a lot of the biggest rap stars of that group. And so soon after he became active in that group, he was targeted himself, and someone shot at him. It started a conflict with him when he was dating Jennifer Lopez. This is P. Diddy. His name was Puff Daddy, and of course, his real name is Sean Combs. And so, in New York, they said on the news that they spent more money to try to get him in jail for a illegal gun possession charge than they spent on any case like that ever. They said on the just evening news when I was living in New York City investigating these things. And so what happened after that with him, I don't know. I can't say. I do know. Could he have been targeted more and then forced to kind of collaborate with U.S. intelligence? It's possible. I don't know. But it is interesting that the indictment of him only has so much evidence and only accuses him of so much, because usually when they're targeting someone, they over indict and they over accuse, not under accuse. So it is true. He sounds like, obviously from the video of his beating of Cassie, he seems like he was a messed up guy, and for doing what he did to her, and whatever other weird and messed up stuff he did. It's obviously there's problems. He's got a lot of problems. But is he a central, Jeff Epstein type of guy? That I can't say. I don't know if there's evidence. With Jeffrey Epstein, there's mountains of evidence that he was working for U.S. intelligence. And I show that, in this film, The CIA Drugs Are Us. And so Epstein was U.S. intelligence and working for Israeli intelligence, Mossad, according to the whistleblowers I have in my film, and some evidence I have in my film. And so, P. Diddy, I can't say there's that kind of evidence out there on him, though. There's, I just haven't investigated him as much after what I told you.
Question from Stephanie: why were the CIA so involved in death row records?
Because they've been targeting the black community in the United States. They're incredibly racist, the CIA. They came out of the wealthiest oligarch families in the United States: the J.P. Morgans, the Rockefellers, the Harrimans, the Carnegies, and all them, the Mellons. And they basically are just incredibly racist, and so they want to control things and do things through the black community in a big way to target the black community. And so they were drug trafficking through death row records. They were drug running through death row records, and they were trying to stop the peace truce that was cultivated by Tupac Shakur and his Black Panther extended family between the largest gangs in the United States, the Bloods and the Crips. And so they're pervasive throughout the country and throughout the armed forces, the Bloods and Crips, believe it or not. And so here was Tupac and his Black Panther extended family getting these Bloods and Crips leaders to call peace truces, stop fighting each other, and stopping their actually drug dealing in a lot of areas, and starting to turn on to activism. And that was a big threat to U.S. intelligence and their racist agenda.
Question from Gordon: what's your opinion about the weapons found at Diddy's mansion and the pink stuff in his hotel room when he was arrested?
Yeah, I mean, that could be, evidence of ugly stuff he was doing, for sure. I just can't say I know enough about it, but there is certainly a aspect of they could have targeted him more. He could have started collaborating with U.S. intelligence, and he could have had these weird sex parties, and they could have recorded people and used that as blackmail, like a smaller version of what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. But I just sorry that I don't know much more about that.
People are asking about your thoughts on Suge Knight.
Yeah, Suge Knight was a very low man on the totem pole of U.S. intelligence. He was like the man. And if you ever heard of Fred Hampton's case, Fred Hampton was a Chicago Black Panther leader. He was made famous in the Judas and the Black Messiah, an Academy Award-winning movie that came out during the pandemic stuff. And so not as many people saw it as should have seen it, but it showed a key undercover agent who infiltrated Fred Hampton's group, and basically they got this guy through multiple arrests. Where after a certain arrest, they said, "Well, we won't put you in jail if you collaborate with us," and that's what I think they did with Suge Knight. And I documented that in my books about Tupac and drugs as weapons against us, and the FBI wanted Tupac Shakur. And so I believe Suge Knight was one of those kind of collaborators, undercover agent collaborators, because he didn't want to be put in jail for more and more serious arrests that he had in his life. And so he wasn't arrested again for serious crimes that he committed while he was running Death Row Records. But he wasn't the head of Death Row Records. Michael Harry Harris was the founder, and he was a top he was a top white dealer. And with him, it was his lawyer, David Kenner. And David Kenner was, after Michael Harry O'Harris was in jail, Kenner was founded Godfather, I believe it was called Godfather Entertainment, which was the umbrella group above Death Row Records. So he was the real owner of Death Row Records, the lawyer, Dave Kenner, for Death Row Records.